Brakathia Howell, Brakathia Rashai, Brakathia Howell, Brakathia Rashai, Brakathia Howell, Brakathia Howell, Bashim Yahushai, Bashim, Rakakwadash, the blindness of the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, which you well, and salutations to the whole for the elect out there, man. You Akim, Akim, that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. I'm the priest Shaman, and this week's topic is what I'm going to get into is U.S. Greece defense contract, and linking that to pretty much Bible prophecy. Recently, we've been getting to the fact that Turkey has moved towards the Eastern Federation of Russia and Iran, and the United States has pretty much consented Syria to that pact. They consider Turkey a bad deal due to the fact that even though Turkey is a NATO ally, they went ahead and got S-400s. You know what I'm saying? Going against the USA's orders not to, because the S-400 missile defense system, the codes are not within NATO's how I say, like, information, if you will. So we see that even though Turkey is a NATO ally, they were kind of buddy buddy with Russia, and the United States is seeing that the Russian influences in that region is getting stronger and stronger, while theirs is getting weaker and weaker. And you know of what that means. That means that Israel's influence is getting weaker and weaker because, as we always state, the state of Israel and the United States are pretty much hand in hand allies, man. The state of Israel using the United States as an extension or a proxy army for them to have influence in the region. But without further ado, what I want to do is I want to get into this article, read about it, and then go through like a few scriptures. So this is Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, or RFERL.org. It says Pompeo inks new defensive pact with Greece, criticizes Russia, Iran, and China. This is back in October. It says U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo arrives in Podgorica before moving to Athens. The United States and Greece have signed an update defense cooperation pact, a move Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said was not aimed against any one nation in the region, including Turkey, which that's all bullshit, man. All right, this is look, the United States are seeing that since Turkey is going towards Russia, they need influence still in that particular region. So what they're doing is they're linking up with Greece, which Greece is also a member of NATO, but Greece and Turkey don't see eye to eye. Even though they're gonna mention this in this article, but we see in parts of when it talks about the toes being weakened in Daniel's. And let me go ahead and read this actually in Revelations, the 17th chapter and 16th verse. It says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, thou shalt hate the whore." So we know that, the 10 horns goes into NATO, the EU, pretty much hating that whore is talking about America. A lot of these nations that are allied with NATO and these European nations eventually all gonna hate America. NATO, Turkey been a member since, was it 1952 as a member of NATO, but guess what? The U.S. coup that took place in Turkey was it 2016 against Recep Erdogan. The guy that is behind the coup, guess where he lives? He's in New York City. So you can see that these nations don't trust the United States. They see that the United States is a cutthroat nation because they work on the interests of the state of Israel. As to where Vladimir Putin, he's a complete nationalist. He'll just do whatever benefits his country. It says the United States and Greece have signed an update defense cooperation pact, a move Secretary of State Pompeo said was not aimed against any one nation in the region, including Turkey. Nevertheless, in remarks made during his visit to Athens on October 5th, Pompeo cited malign Russian influence on NATO ally Greece, and its neighbors criticized Iran and China. So we know that the United States has big beef with China due to the fact that China steals intellectual properties, which is true. China pretty much steals technology from Russia, China, everyone. What they do is they'll buy one of your products, reverse engineer it, and then sell it for half the price. So they stole a major military secrets from the United States. Some say $600 billion worth of intellectual theft on China. So the Chinese They're a bunch of thieves. And that right there is causing bit of tension between them and the United States. They even steal from Russia, but Russia works with them, I guess. Adding to the fact that the prophecies speak about that all these nations are gonna let loose missiles upon America, and for that to work, they have to be allied together. For America to be destroyed by Russia via nuclear missiles and the state of Israel, a lot of allies have to join Russia, and a lot of treaties between the United States and these different nations have to be broken, and it will come to pass that will happen. It says the accord announced by Pompeo provides for increase in joint U.S., Greece, and NATO activity at Lartia, Stafanovico, and Alexandroupoli, as well as infrastructure and other improvements at the Saudi Bay Naval Base. So this contract includes more naval bases being built upon Greece, and we're gonna take a look at the map. We'll pull up a map so we can kind of see what how geopolitically the strategies behind what the United States is doing. It says Pompeo denied that the heightened defense ties were linked to increased tension between the United States and Turkey, which is bullshit. That's exactly why they're doing it. They failed in the region, so they still want a presence in the regions and want to push Russia towards the Balkans and away from the Aegean Sea, which they're beefing over that. Also a NATO ally, Turkey, but one that has angered Washington by recent actions, including its threat against U.S. allied Kurdish fighters in Syria. Right. So the recently we also spoke about the fact that Turkey was going against um, the Kurds, which annexed certain parts of Syria, namely Rojava, and named as West Kurdistan. All right, which they stole that area back by the U.S. military as a goal to destabilize Syria and put a puppet in there. And we know why they won Syria. They won Syria to ultimately take Iran, because the troops that the United States so-called evacuated, a lot of them moved towards Iraq, which Iraq doesn't want the United States there because you've seen what they did to their economy. But since Iraq and Iran has made good ties, the U.S. wants to send more presence in Iraq again, which they did, and they're there illegally. They're there in Syria illegally. They're there in Iraq illegally, and all on the behest of the state of Israel, man. All right. The United States has no interest, no real benefit in being in the Middle East. All that scuffle that's going on is also prophesied in the book of Joel, where it speaks about Jehoshaphat. Let me go ahead and get it. This is the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter. I believe it's around. This is Joel chapter 13, verse 12. I'm going straight to the point. It says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, Yehoshaphat in Hebrew, which is the Most High's decision. That decision is judgment. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. And where are all the heathens, these 17 nations gathered? Like, what's the bulk of all this happening? In the Middle East. Now, the scripture says the least of the flock shall draw them out. So who's starting all this? Who's really pushing all this? It's the state of Israel, right? It says Jeremiah 49 and 20. It says, therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh, that he has taken against Edom. Edom is a so-called white race. All right. And his purpose that he hath purpose against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. What does it mean, the least of the flock? The least of the flock of Edom is a so-called Jew. So the state of Israel is the reason a huge tension is happening over there in the Middle East. Israel is a real enemy of Iran. Iran is not a threat to the United States in no way, shape, or form, at least militarily, but it is a threat to Israel, right? Because they don't have intercontinental ballistic missiles, and even if they did have intercontinental ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads, they'll be wiped off the map before they could even get a chance to use them. If they're trying to get to the United States, what they do have is they have missiles that could hit Israel, which they will hit Israel, and that's the real threat. All right, and the oil do play a major part in it. I wouldn't say major to the United States, but major to Israel, right? In fact, that's another reason they're over there in Greece, because they're beefing over the fact that Turkey is drilling oil in Cyprus. It says Greece and Turkey are also traditional bitter rivals. It says they updated military ties are not connected. Pompeo said, adding that the moves were focused solely on the best interests of Greece and the United States. Really? So why didn't you try to do that before? You can see that these politicians are full of shit, man. All right, but all this stuff is just making Bible prophecies come to pass. It says Pompeo said some reports indicated the deal was only about rights to use Greek bases, but that did not fundamentally capture what is our two countries actually achieved in this new agreement. Yeah, so you want bases over there, all right? They want naval bases, all right? And Greece could use the money, because they're gonna. It's a defense. It's a defensive contract that they're gonna also give Greece aerial weapons and such. It says it's much deeper than that. It's much more strategic than that. It will have a much greater impact on the capacity of the United States and Greece to work together militarily and to be supportive of NATO, he said. You got to remember that the majority of NATO is just the United States military. The United States military used NATO as a proxy to put bases and ships in regions closer to Russia. NATO was formed against Russia. And the proof on that is Vladimir Putin asked to be a part of NATO, which they declined, So, during 1991, when the Soviet Union was dismantled, the agreement was that NATO would not push 1 inch westward, which NATO has push really upon Russia's border. You got members such as Poland. Plus, you have the United States having influence in Ukraine. Remember the 2014 Ukraine coup? They put a puppet leader over there, Poroshenko, all right, a U.S. puppet leader over there in 2014, and that's really on Russia's border. They also tried a coup back in 2010 with Georgia, which also is on Russian borders. But those two nations are not part of NATO, but the United States just want influence in countries that's on the border of Russia for when this Third World War kick off. They have military bases that could detonate missiles and shoot down missiles and such. It's all strategic. But really, if you get in depth, it's really the Most High. I'm going to jump back to another scripture in Obadiah chapter 1, verse 7. It says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. So a lot of these nations that are confederate with the United States eventually going to turn their back on the United States. And we see this with Turkey. Trust, Greece, Britain, all these nations that are your closest ally. And I did say Britain, one of the longest running allies between the United States and one of the United States is Britain. But the scripture says that thy mother shall be confounded by thee. All right, meaning Britain, because the United States came out of Britain. But eventually Britain is gonna hate the United States, man, for some particular reason. The Tomahawk cruise missiles that the United States have, they won't sell that to many nations. They don't even sell it. They don't sell it to Israel. And even with the military contract they have with Saudi Arabia, they have yet to give them Tomahawk cruise missiles because of the defense secrets. But they gave it to Britain. So the Most High is saying even Britain is going to turn their back on America and shoot missiles upon America. It says there was no other country that drove this other than our knowledge that two countries working together with the amended agreement will lead to better outcomes for each of us, he added. Pompeo said the renewal of relations with Athens arrived at this important moment, citing key regions and countries of interest and concern. It says, take the Balkans, which remain an area of strategic competition. And that's the Balkans are, let's look it up. Let's look up the Balkans. And then we're going to go back to the article. Balkans. So it's that region right there, you see? That particular region. It says the Balkans, also known as the Balkan Peninsula, is a geographic area in Southeast Europe with various definitions of meaning, including geopolitical history. So that particular region over there is where they want Russian influence to just stay over that particular region. all right, and get them out of places like Cyprus. That's NATO world map. It says take the Balkans, which remain an area of strategic competition. Take Russia. So he's taking shots right now. Mike Pompeo is taking shots right now. It says take Russia, which undermines the sovereignty of your neighbors. It tries to stifle religious freedom from many Orthodox believers, and all these people that he's taking shots at. These are things that the United States have done. All right, very hypocritical statements that this guy is making. It says take the Islamic Republic of Iran, which they've been sanctioning the shit out of Iran ever since 1979, when Iran got its revolution and nationalized its oil, which was detrimental to the state of Israel. The United States been on, the hunt to take it back, man. You know, including heavy sanctions, which ultimately just hurts the average person, the average citizen in Iran, in hopes because Trump done taxed the shit out of their medical industry, their construction industry. You already know they got hit with oil, their oil business, in the hopes that the people, will just under pressure destabilize and come against the government for these harsh conditions. But it's been over 40 years, and the Islamic Republic of Iran still stands. So all that does is make the people unified and strong, and make these nations find alternative routes to survive these sanctions. It says whose terrorist proxies have destabilized the Middle East and turned Lebanon into a client state and helped create a refuge crisis that continues to impact Greece to this day. And there is a heavy refuge crisis in Greece. You know what I'm saying? Why? But really, it's not because of Iran. It's because of the United States, man. They're the ones that fund these militias. Take ISIS, for example, Al Qaeda, you know, that fuck up these countries such as Iraq, Syria, all right, and force these refugees to go into places like Greece, to go into places like Turkey, all right, and these nations are waking up to that. It says, and he added, take China, which is using economic means to coerce countries into lopsided deals that benefit Beijing and leaves its clients mired in debt. And, China is guilty of that. All right. China does make some fucked up deals, man, to where, like, if they can't spy on your intellectual properties, they don't know what you're selling. If they can't take a look and examine, if you want to get in Chinese markets and look at your merchandise, they won't let you do trade in China. He stressed that the need to continue our work to stop malign Russian influence both within Greece and with our neighbors' borders. In addition, he said, let's continue to exert pressure on the Islamic Republic of Iran. And this is why the United States moved a lot of its troops from Syria, all right, to Iraq. But it still has troops in northern Syria because they're trying to keep troops on those major highways that stops Syria from trading with Iraq. Let's look at one of these maps. Let's look at a map actually. Let's look at the map. Okay. Let's X out this Balkans thing. All right, so here's Turkey, here's Syria, and there's Iraq. So what the United States does is they have Damascus over here, but you can see that Syria is pretty much connected to Iraq, and you have particular major highways where the United States Army is still sitting on these highways to stop trade from Iraq and Syria, and they fund these militias. In fact, they got proof that through Hillary Clinton that the United States in fact created ISIS. This guy Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, his real name Simon Elliott, is a Mossad agent. The Mossad is the Israeli equivalent of the CIA. It's their intelligence service. So we see that yeah, You know, they got troops here in Syria and Iraq. All right, and we know that, you know, if you close to Iraq, you're even closer to Iran, and that's the goal ultimately. That's the goal, to get in Iran. That's why they even in Syria in the first place. You know, they got a military contract with Saudi Arabia, so the you know, they still want influence in this region. You know, you see them over here right now. They moved to Greece, and the big thing too is over there's a GNC here, right over there. GNC, they fighting over that because I believe it's freshwater territories. Oh, Slovakia, Slovakia. Now where's Cyprus? Here's Cyprus. Now Turkey wants the rights to drill oil in Cyprus, which that's also causing conflict between Greece and Egypt, right? Over the rights to drill in Cyprus. So all this stuff, all this geopolitical stuff that's going on, is all Bible prophecy, man. These different NATO nations, all right, are going to ultimately fall out that NATO agreement and turn their back on the United States. If you could see this map and you look at Turkey and the Mediterranean Sea, over here, Turkey over here. This is the main way oil is transported all throughout different parts of Europe. So you can see that Turkey plays a major part strategically, which is when you read Ezekiel 38th chapter, and it speaks about Gomor, Togomer, and Tubal. That's Asia Minor region right here, which is all Turkey. It's all Turkey. They're going to be allied with Russia over here, which is land of Gog and Magog. See if we can get some pull up some NATO members. I mean, that's pretty much the point. I'm not going to read the remaining article. The point has been hit, man. All right, they failed they failed with Turkey. They had a bad deal with Turkey. They failed in Syria, and now they're trying to ally themselves with Greece. But it doesn't matter who the United States ally themselves with. Eventually, all these particular NATO nations are going to turn their back on the United States according to the Bible. And you can see that Russia is becoming a new superpower in terms of making peace treaties with these nations and doing things more diplomatically. Hey man, we're moving closer to the end. With that, I'm gonna give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, which you well. And salutations to the hopeful elect out there, man. You Akim to Zadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.